Welcome to the afternoon constitutional and our theme song, Compensating for Something. My name is Joe Thomas, and we're here thanks to our friends at the Government Accountability and Oversight Group, govoversight.org. Our favorite four-letter word is FOIA, and we use it all the time to get the answers to what's going on behind the closed doors of government. And I appreciate you tuning in. We try to expose and bring in different topics and things like that. And on this Independence Day weekend, while many other people are on vacation on a beach somewhere, we are here for you, and we appreciate you being there for us. Share these videos, and people can subscribe through our YouTube channel, and you'll get alerts right as this happens, because the world needs more alerts. And we're going to begin. I don't know if you saw any of the news coverage. Most of it was derisive over the weekend over the Moms for Liberty event going on in our nation's capital, and that I believe it was, and I was here with you, but pretty much everyone else was there, and we're going to catch up with Kimberly Fletcher with Moms for Liberty. We're also going to talk about a place we're going to be next week, next Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. We're going to be doing this program from Memphis, Tennessee, not because I have any musical talents or aspirations, no, the hair notwithstanding, and please don't make fun of it. This is what it looks like when you blow dry it, and I don't blow dry it usually, but time was of the essence. But sartorial splendor notwithstanding, we are going to be in Memphis for Freedom Fest, and it's a week and a half away. Thursday, Friday, Saturday in Memphis. It's the world's largest gathering of free minds, and you can join us in person. I think tickets are still available at freedomfest.com, and you can join us there, or you can hook up with us as well during our programs here and support the Scouseds. The Anthem Film Festival is worth it. To a great degree. I mean, just if for nothing else, the film festival is worth it. And the Anthem Film Festival, some great programs. Pink Houses, the story of the Kelo decision and the families involved in it, that kind of thing, have all premiered at Freedom Fest. So I hope you can join us for that, either through what we do here. I mean, it's Mike Lee, it's Mike Rowe, and Microphony. That's me. That's going to be there at Freedom Fest. But you can still get tickets. Memphis is not all that far if you are watching us in the Commonwealth of Virginia. What it's like when John Belushi took off the sunglasses in Blues Brothers? Really? All right, I'll put them back on. I don't want to get weird. Get all kids all weird in here all of a sudden, with a great lineup of folks who are going to be speaking about liberty, and what you have Heather Wagenhals, who hosts the Unlock Your Wealth program, is going to be here. She's one of the presenters at Freedom Fest, and we're going to talk about understanding the wealth that you have, because unfortunately the gaslighters, from where I sit anyway, are of the belief that if they tell you enough times that you can't possibly get along without somebody's help. I think you've heard the phrase, "Oh, you didn't build that." Well, that's the problem in our world right now, is our relationship with our government. The one that started 247 years ago on, well, technically July 2nd, when they ratified the legal filing, which the Declaration of Independence was, and sent it off to Parliament, thus beginning American conservatism. Fun fact, Russell Kirk is credited for beginning the conservative movement, Barry Goldwater, and so on and so forth down the line, when he wrote eloquently about the governing principles and the life of one member of Parliament named Edmund Burke. Edmund Burke spearheaded a movement in Parliament to accept our Declaration of Independence. You got us. Guilty as charged. King's nuts. Sorry. Because under Magna Carta, unlike most of the other crowned heads of the world, the King of England could actually be held accountable by the rule of law. And so Jefferson's filing and, of course, flagging from Charlottesville, where this show originates from, kind of personal to us. The whole, we hold these truths to be self-evident. All men are created equal, and that they aren't. I know that's the Constitution. When in the course of human events. And the abuses and usurpations, I think, are important when you look at some of them. He has sent forth hordes of new officers, or he's created new offices and sent forth their officers to eat out our substance. Of course, the one that breaks my heart is the one that Jefferson wrote. I understand he had only been in the Congress for about 6 months when they said, nobody dislikes you yet. You write this. And he wrote this eloquent piece about the piratical warfare known as slavery. And it's not a secret passage. It's not a hidden passage or anything like that. It's actually in the National Archives. You can see the original draft in which this eloquent piece, just ripping apart the business of slavery, this execrable commerce, as Jefferson called it, and actually identifies the fact that several times the Continental Congress, the American government, even under the King, had been trying legislatively to end slavery prior to that, and the King kept stopping it. Unfortunately, Jefferson wasn't the deal maker that some of our future presidents would be, and he was not able to get the support. As a matter of South Carolina, along with Georgia and one other of the colonies, they said, we're not ratifying it if you don't get this out of here. And so it was taken out. But read it online, if for no other reason than for all the people who tell you that Jefferson was a racist and loved slavery. He didn't. He saw it as the crippling disease of the society that he called it later in his letters on the Commonwealth of Virginia there. So as we head into Independence Day and we look at these abuses and usurpations and we realize how many of them are coming to pass again right here, we still have an opportunity to fix it. We have the tools that have been laid hidden, almost like in a video game where you're like, oh, there's a magic spell. It's under, and if I know the password and I can get the widget that you can unlock things like the Article 5 convention, of which I'm an ardent supporter, along with guys like Mark Levin and Charlie Kirk and Tucker Carlson in areas like this. But George Mason insisted that the Article 5 be written into the Constitution to give the states recourse should the centralized federal government grow too strong. And so we're about halfway to ratification. We need a couple of more states. We're working on Virginia. Virginia was halfway there. We got it through the General Assembly, but then the Senate was problematic. So a lot of folks who are running for election in November have been asked and answered, and unfortunately most of them are in the Republican Party. But there were some Democrats that supported the idea of the Convention of States, like Chap Peterson, Joe Morrissey, both of whom lost their primary races to candidates far further to the left wing of their agenda. So as we head in here, there are still the things in our foundational documents that will give us the tools to rein back in the bureaucracies, that the offices, as mentioned in the abuses and usurpations. And understand, Jefferson was a keen observer of human nature. He said in the Declaration of Independence, certainly people are likely to suffer abuses as long as the abuses are sufferable. And that was where we found ourselves. This is why Patrick Henry in the day had to yell, "Give me liberty or give me death." And quite honestly, a lot of people wanted to take him up on it. But the cooler heads prevailed, and once von Steuben schooled General Washington on how to perform in the battlefield, and perhaps one of the most seminal moments in the foundation of this nation was when George Washington, sitting with General von Steuben, learned that you don't have to win, you just have to not lose. And I wonder if some of that is playing out in Ukraine right now. I know it's controversial. I'm not saying Vladimir Zelensky. This is a battle as it was in the 30s between nationalist socialism and global socialism. Because nationalist socialism is usually found in countries with natural resources and things that they can hold dearly to themselves, my precious. But what the Ukrainian forces have been doing is just what von Steuben told Washington to do when fighting an occupying force. Just don't lose. You don't have to win, just don't lose. It's a paradigm that was followed up by Ho Chi Minh many years later, who had studied this in what he hoped would have been a battle with the French, who were occupying Vietnam for quite some time. French hightailed it out just in time to leave us holding the big bag of burning excrement. And those international entanglements that George Washington warned us about came into play yet again. So as we approach the 247th birthday of the United States, certainly I think most of us can see a federal government that has grown too powerful. You look at the polling data, and 20% of the country thinks we're headed in the right direction. Most surveys of what do you think the biggest issue is, the economy, inflation, any number of things that add up to, I can't afford the same amount of stuff I used to, finds its way to the top of the heap, while things like transgender issues are way down at the bottom. Yet it seems to be what we spend most of our time discussing because it helps clickbait, click-throughs on your weblog. It gets you a parade. But does it win you an election? I've been in broadcasting for 37 years, and frequently people have said, well, why don't you? You're eloquent, you know the issues, you know the, why don't you? I said, would you vote for a guy who has all this? I mean, look at this. Does that look like a member of the House of Delegates? Don't, before you answer that. A male member of the House of Delegates in the 20th or 21st centuries, because I'm sure there were times back in the day. But I also say, the most resoundingly popular radio show ever in the history of all broadcasting was Cousin Brucey's show in New York City in the 50s on WABC radio. And they had a 25 share. That means that any given time, out of 100 radios that were on in New York City at the time, 25% of them, or 25, were tuned to WABC. That was the most popular radio shows ever. Nowadays, if a radio station or a radio show gets 6 or 7% of the available radios, they're considered a big success. That's not going to win you an election at all. 6% of the population means, you're the first one off when they do ranked choice voting. And that's still on the ballot as well. So you watch for that fun and frolic to be coming your way anytime soon. So we have a situation where the movements that are actually captivating people, like the Moms movement, Moms for Liberty, born of a slip of the tongue by Terry McAuliffe, whose brilliance wouldn't allow him to let go of it because that would seem to be against the teachers' unions and other powerful organizations, bore this moms movement. The mama bears of the United States have united, regardless of their previous political party, and have marched on the establishment and said, don't you dare do that to our kids. And I think what makes them redoubly angry is the fact that it was sold to them under the auspices of, you're busy enough, dear. We'll take care of it. And that's really angered the mothers, the platitudinous way our public schools have treated the mothers of America have led to the moms movement, Kimberly Fletcher and Moms for Liberty, and that movement is going to be the number one decider. That's why you saw guys like Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis and even Nikki Haley attending, Tim Scott attending the Moms for Liberty conference this past weekend, because they all want to be number one with the moms. That used to be a radio paradigm. If you wanted to have a winning radio station, you better be number one with moms. And somewhere along the line, the authoritarian government decided, you know what? We're smarter than all those moms. And they would attach on to some story of some drug-addicted mom whose baby found a firearm and shot a teacher. True story. And they would say, see, that's why you need the government experts raising your children. Here, have a Soma. Hello? Anyone else read Aldous Huxley anywhere? Hello? Hello, McFly? Is this thing on? Nobody remembers Soma, Brave New World, where the men and women of the society were just there sexually to enjoy themselves, and when they created a child, it was taken by the government and raised by the government. And the parents were given rations of what can only be presumed as some sort of opiate called Soma. Let's make Brave New World fiction again. Never mind the bumper stickers that say, let's make 1984 fiction again. Because all these things, it's as if somebody read these books decades ago and said, oh, that seems like a good idea. And the technocracy movement existed long before Aldous Huxley or George Orwell came along. I mean, these were people, Frank Baum was trying to send up the expert class in his Wizard of Oz novels. Woodrow Wilson and those folks who, after the Civil War, used a group I refer to as the Knights in White Satin, as the boogeyman. Hey, the guys in the white sheets. Well, I mean, except for the guy who was governor of Virginia. He's with us. So are the other ones, but shh. They use the Knights in White Satin as the boogeyman to get you to say, well, yeah, somebody's got to stop all this, so let's give them some authority. And they continue to amass this authority, and it seems like every time they need to, they bring out the Knights in White Satin. Was it 20-some-odd people shot in Baltimore? And for once, even the mayor isn't calling it gun violence. He's like, this plague of violence in our city has to stop. But in cities like Baltimore and Philadelphia and even little towns like Richmond and Charlottesville, the specter of white supremacy has come back. And why is that? I've been asked that several times. Why are they still hammering away at white supremacy? So because if you look at these cities, and something that Donald Trump has very successfully done in 2016, and that I think radio shows and YouTube shows like this one have done successfully, is to ask the question, and I'm going to do it again. How's that been working for you? When asked about the poverty that has gripped these cities cities that Jefferson warned us about piling up on one another. If you pile yourselves up on one another as we do in European-style cities, we shall be rife for the same corruption you see in European cities. Other writings and musings by Thomas Jefferson warning us about piling on. When Charlie Kirk mentioned this at an event, he was called, oh, what a horrible thing to say. But look at the corruption that goes on in these cities. Ask a New Yorker who discovered a gymnasium full of illegal immigrants from Lord knows where with the intent to do Lord knows what in their kids' grade school. Now it's not just moms. Now it's New Yorkers are mad. I don't know if you saw this just last week. A guy threw what he called a pizza party, where he threw pizza at City Hall. And he kept throwing pizzas at City Hall until the mayor called him. And I must confess, Mayor Adams of New York City and your humble host went to high school together. We didn't go in the same circles, but he and I are graduates of Bayside High School in New York City. So my classmate, my fellow Commodore, called him and said, whoa, stop throwing pizza at the City Hall. Because the authoritarians in New York, probably using white supremacy as the reasoning for their efforts, were going to ban is the wrong word. They were going to shadow ban pizza. In New York City, they were going to ban pizza. And they were going to do so under the premise of the green movement. They wanted to clean up all the emissions of these pizza ovens. Too many pizza ovens in New York. We need to control how many pizza ovens are in New York City. I mean, next thing, they'll put limits on how much salmon you can catch to make lox out of. Oy. Such a thing. But they're going to do this because they say the emissions from these pizza ovens, whatever, Al Gore. When we've already, if you look at any of the work we've done at govoversight.org, and it begins with one of our founding members, Chris Horner, the author of Red Hot Lies, Power Grab, and the Politically Incorrect Guide to Global Warming. He pointed out that years ago, while sitting in a conference room at Enron, you remember Enron, don't you? The governor of California and the leaders of the electric utilities said, we got to find a way to make people buy more solar cells. And they started having rolling brownouts. And they were telling the people saying, we're real sorry about your electricity, but, there's this thing called global warming. And it's causing us to have electricity shortages. Why? Well, it's scientific, and have we shown you the video about how we're taking care of the kids for your moms? Yeah, it's the same idea. And so the green movement's still trying to catch on, still trying to find its legs, is now going to ban the pizza ovens of New York City. I mean, you might as well tell them they can't use the phrase Big Apple anymore. So they tell the pizza owners, and one of the pizza owners says, that's all I can stand. I can't stand no more, and starts throwing pizza at the New York City. But my favorite part of the story was an attorney who did the math, and he said the daily emissions of all the pizza ovens in New York City, all the pizza ovens, wouldn't add up to 1 hour travel time of John Kerry's Learjet. Now, you may say that that's just not fair because John Kerry has important places to go and people to see and things to do. But if you're going to ban all the pizza ovens, or actually what they're going to do is they're going to shadow ban them. They're going to tax them to the point of where a slice of pizza will cost you $15 or $16 just in the compliance costs. But that's what they do. And that's why it was so important that after Jefferson's legal filing 247 years ago with Parliament, Madison, with some fist fights with George Mason and Patrick Henry, said, we can do it differently. And they came up with a rule book to try to make Jefferson's fanciful musings make sense. And so far, so good. I mean, we've made it 50 times longer than most democracies ever have. Most democracies, 50, maybe 100 years before they decline into anarchy, followed by outright despotism. Because that despotism has to follow so that order can be restored. See Rome. Joining us now from the lineup for one of my favorite events every year is Freedom Fest. Freedom Fest is coming up in Memphis, Tennessee. And Memphis, Tennessee is a city I've never been to. But just consider how many great songs have been written about Memphis, Tennessee, never mind the ones written in Memphis, Tennessee. I can't wait to get there myself. But joining us from the speaker's docket at Freedom Fest is Heather Wagenhals. She's the host of the Unlock Your Wealth program. Heather, welcome to the program. How are you doing? Let's see if we can get her audio connected here. Hang on one second here.
How's that? Is
that
better?
It sounds great. That's perfect. Thank you so much.
Excellent.
So, Heather,
well, it's a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you, and thank you so much for taking some time out for us. We're looking forward to Freedom Fest as we do every year, freedomfest.com. There's still time to get tickets and maybe even a hotel room, probably more like an Airbnb. But talk about, and I was schooling up on you a little bit, and really the outlook of what you do is really to convince people to ungaslight them. The people who have been told by the authoritarians for so long, no, you can't do that. We'll do it for you. And then you can go on your way after that. So talk about unlocking your wealth and the checkup from the neck up it needs to be first before you worry about what's in your bank account.
Well, I like how you approach this because it's exactly, you're right. So the smallest minority is the individual.
Mm-hmm.
And if you take away all of the ethnicities, the religious groups, the racial groups, and you boil down to the most important single relevant minority, and that's the individual.
Yep.
So I, as the individual, not part of any of these other groups, but even if these other groups didn't exist and I was here all by myself, I am responsible for my own welfare, for my health, well-being, and because we're human beings of higher thought, to be able to have the most rational and full existence that I can possibly have. And that's my responsibility. That's not the government's not responsibility. It's not my parents to leave me a big inheritance.
Mm-hmm.
And, and that didn't happen anyway. So I was like, oh, I can't count on that, right? So,
Right.
oh, goodness, it's about me.
Mm-hmm.
So what we have to do is we have to accept that. We don't have to like it. We can go kicking and screaming. I remember telling my dad in my late teens, I was born in the wrong income bracket. I remember complaining about that.
I like the way it's your fault, Dad. Why weren't you more successful? It sounds like my daughter.
I was meant to be rich. What is this?
So when was the Gladwell moment? When was that tipping point when you, Heather, said, "Oh, hold it. I can do it. I can create this myself"?
Well, it's interesting because I grew up on the west side of town, and I used to have to, we were so poor, I used to have to envy the dirt poor kids, I used to say, because they had dirt.
That's good.
So I knew I didn't want to be there any longer, but I didn't quite know how. And then when I graduated high school, my freshman year in college, the stock market tanked in '87. And then Gordon Gekko told me greed was good. So I said, you know what? I should be a stockbroker. So I went and I passed the test. I got a job as a stockbroker. And then I'm making these other people money, right?
Hmm.
But I'm essentially a glorified salesperson. I'm just doing the numbers, I'm dialing.
Right.
And my boss was really great. The guy that hired me said, "You are not a stockbroker. You are not a salesperson. You are here to facilitate other people's dreams of wealth." And I'm like, okay, I got that, right? So I became the best salesperson. And he pretty much taught me how to be an actress to mold my sales skills to whatever the client was looking for, whatever gave them the capacity to say yes. And I
Hmm.
was making these people boatloads of money. But I was six figures in debt. I was overwhelmed. I was like, I had the financed car, like with the fancy wheels, like all of that
Yeah.
stuff, because I didn't know what being wealthy was or what having money was. I just thought you needed to go out and make it.
Yeah.
And I was really good at making it. But there's that other piece of the puzzle that is, oh, now you have to keep it.
Right.
So I had to
What are you
figure
going to
that piece
do
out.
with it? Right. And that's, I think, I see a lot of folks, and we were just talking about. I went to this little high school in New York City called Bayside High School, and we were talking about Mayor Adams of New York was a classmate of mine. Funny enough, another classmate of mine was Jordan Belfort. And talk about a classic story of somebody who gets caught up in the trappings of wealth rather than the power of wealth and what you can do to be a change maker, a rainmaker, if you will, if you understand, what little bits of wealth can mean for somebody, Heather. So is that where you're taking us? Is that what you're talking about? Is understanding that it isn't the car, it isn't the penthouse apartment. It isn't all those things that you wind up six figures in debt for. It's really a much more substantial thing.
Well, it's actually a much more basic thing because all of that boils down to effective decision management. And if we're not in our highest resource state, all of those trappings and temptations that get us into debt
Hmm.
are are where we make the mistakes because we're trying to placate some sort of chemical reaction in our body. Like that's what drugs and alcohol do. Well, so spending money can also do that too.
Sure.
And it's trying to recreate this natural chemical state that we have in our body that we long to have. And whether that's, finding security and safety, or maybe it's finding thrills or excitement, whatever it is, it's unique to every individual based on our upbringing and what exposure we've had to things and how we see the world.
Hmm.
And so it's about controlling our physiology and having a simple framework to build wealth, to save, create money, and then save it and invest it properly. And we have to do that the way the brain and body work. So it's more basic than just trying to look for some sort of philosophical
Right.
identification to greater wealth or that self-actualization. It's about controlling our physiology and how do we perform better in every moment so that we can be effective at making decisions, because when we have more money, we have more resources, and that equals choice. And so the more choice you create in your life, the more choice you have. And you can do better things with that when you feel good about who you are
Hmm.
physiologically.
I see. It sounds almost to a degree, like was what somebody would tell somebody with a substance abuse problem is that often the root of that is deeper inside. It's either a need for friends, a need for some sort of actualization that will help you along the way. Is that what you found as well? Is that people who spend everything as quickly as they make it are just looking for that triggering?
Well, I think that we are triggered, and then the poor decision making happens because once we start these hormone dumps, like towards pleasure, away from pain, what happens is our brain and our bodies divert blood flow away from the prefrontal cortex, so we can't even make a rational decision because we can't access that part of the brain that does
Hmm.
that because we're in that fight, freeze, or flee moment.
Is
So once we get over that,
Is that
That's
why?
where we make the good decisions.
Is that why sometimes you look at people who just count themselves as wildly wealthy, yet they really, in terms of statistics, aren't? But they have a house, they have a property, they're paying it off, they've got a job that makes them happy, and they don't have a 10-figure bank account or a stock portfolio to beat the band with. Yet they call themselves wealthy, and people say, what are you talking about? You're not wealthy. You're barely making ends meet. But it sounds like that's what you're kind of talking about is getting right up here so that you can be right down here in the wallet.
Exactly. And this part has to come first
Hmm.
because if you get the money first and this isn't right, it's going to go bye bye.
So how do
It's
you
like you,
so I mean, how does it work? I mean, is it just is it because a lot of people listen to guys like Dave Ramsey, and he's just like, all right, baby
mm,
step number one is, and you're like, all right, how does that work? And I talk to people like I've struggled, I tried to, I can't do it, but it sounds like they have the same problem you're describing, which is see money, spend money kind of thing, and they just can't stop that part. They've missed that healing that went on. So how do you work with somebody that way?
well, I deal a lot with sudden wealth people. So actors,
Oh yeah.
actresses, professional athletes, musicians that have slaved away. They have this starving artist mentality, perhaps, or they have guilt because they've had some overwhelming success. And it's not just see it spend it, because it's some people are see it save it and they hoard it and they never enjoy it. They
Mm,
never get the pleasure of supporting organizations that pay it forward. They're not focused on leaving a legacy. They're dealing with scarcity mindset.
mhm.
There's people that have the overabundant mindset where, oh, there'll be more money tomorrow. But in the case of a lot of professional athletes, one injury cuts
Mhm.
that income stream forever.
Yep.
So it's a little bit more nuanced than that, and we can all fix our physiology simply by taking a slow, controlled, deep breath, stepping away from something. When we start feeling that hormone engage, we're like, oh, maybe our boss is yelling at us for something we didn't do, right? So we're fuming inside. We either want to run away or we want to go blame the other person that really made the mistake, or we want to yell at our boss, but it's not in our best interest to do that. So usually we just
Mhm.
kind of hold it in and we cause all this stress because cortisol is a good hormone. It tells us when we've had a boundary violation, but when we don't get to release it properly, all of a sudden now that can make us sick and give us cancer and those kinds of things. So it's about how do we address every moment and be present minded in this moment so we can make the most effective decisions. And sometimes the most effective decision is waiting to make an effective
Mhm.
decision.
Oh, yes.
Because back to that, boss situation, there's all these things that like, oh my gosh, I just, you're having drinks later on and say, yeah, I really wanted to give him a peace of mind and I should have said this, this, and this. Well, it's coming to you now because you are back to having access to that rational part of your brain where you
Mhm.
can have reasoning. But in the moment, you can't access that because you're so overwhelmed by the emotion that's going on and the physical changes in your body because of the chemistry change. So this is all about learning how to stay in our highest resource state and avoid being triggered by people, places, or things. And that's the one thing that a lot of addicts have to stay away from or change as part of their recovery is they have to change the people, the places, and the things that get them into the ineffective decision making.
Heather Wagenhals is on with us. FreedomFest.com is how you get tickets. Don't pay any attention. All of a sudden, I picked up my dongle and I'm waving it in the camera, and it's horribly rude. Uh, Heather, so when somebody comes to see you at Freedom Fest coming up in a week and a half's time, will you be holding, kind of sessions on this? Obviously, you're not going to help everybody who walks into the room, but are you going to be working on this? Talk about what you're going to be doing at Freedom Fest next week.
Well, I am for the second year in a row hosting the live stream for Freedom Fest. So for folks that can't attend in person, they can go see Freedom Fest online. We're going to have some of the main stage presentations, and then I'm going to be interviewing all of the speakers that are coming through the door. So in addition to facilitating some panels on tax strategies and money management and being a part of the Global Financial Summit this year, I'm also hosting the live stream because the biggest reason why I'm a part of Freedom Fest, and this will be my 10th one now, is because we cannot have financial freedom until we have personal, professional, and economic freedom
Right.
and political freedom. All of that goes into how we're able to make money. Think about this. I'm a writer. I have a book coming out. What if I didn't have the freedom of expression and the ability to write what is in my head down because I'd be in fear of persecution?
Right.
So not only would, my ability to communicate freely and my liberty would be stifled there because that would be stifled. My economic freedom is now stifled. And
Right.
when my economic freedom is stifled, how can I have personal financial freedom? So it all ties together. And that's what I love about Freedom Fest because it's a nonpartisan event
Mm-hmm.
and it invites all comers to the table to have effective discussions about creating that one extra way to help all people succeed and elevate and empower all people. We're not the ones with the answers, but we're here to come to the table to try to create those together. And as you can see, we have this incredible presidential candidate lineup, and we've got them from all parties, Democrat, Republican,
Yep.
and Libertarian, which is so exciting this year. We have so many different things. We've got borders on trial. We've got so many people speaking about the ability to choose medically free, like
Mm-hmm.
for, marijuana and different types of medicinal type of things. So it's a critical piece for us to be able to support liberty in all of its areas. And the best thing about Freedom Fest is because it's not just about preserving liberty and promoting it, but it's also about liberty in action. So we have the Anthem Film Festival where we can see
Mm-hmm.
creatively all of these people expressing their creativity with the music festival. With that, we are also seeing our free speech rights being exercised with the Punching Up Comedy Festival. And it truly is the ultimate summit for liberty. And I'm thrilled to be a part of it this year. So if folks want to be able to connect with me, they can meet me at Freedom Fest. Just pop by the live stream studio and I'd be happy to say it. But if you want to learn more about creating financial freedom for yourself and your family, all they have to do is visit unlockyourwealth.com.
Well, we look forward to seeing you there. We'll be doing this program and a morning radio program as well from Freedom Fest as well. It's interesting. We're talking about the 247th anniversary of the founding of this nation. And one of the points that I always bring up to people is the use of the word there in the Declaration of Independence when Jefferson said, we're endowed by, people are endowed by their creator with unalienable rights. And it was important because this meant you came into the world with your rights. You have them no matter what anyone tells you, no matter what anyone screams at you, as you mentioned, the gaslighting boss hollering at you. Your rights are yours, and what you choose to do with them is always at the essence of what goes on at Freedom Fest. And it sounds like that's exactly kind of where you're going with this as well, is the idea that, you don't get your rights. It's like the end of the Wizard of Oz. Why, my boy, you have nothing. All you need is a piece of paper, right, Heather?
Yes, exactly. And that's why it's critical that we take and we learn about what our liberties are, because sometimes people don't even know what they were born with. And it's interesting because you talk about people who become naturalized citizens that
Oh, yeah.
immigrate here and do the homework. And sometimes those folks know more about the country that we grew up in
Mm-hmm.
than a lot of other people. So it's really important for us to focus on what is our liberty? How do I exercise that to create the life I want to love to live?
So we will see you there, and looking forward to seeing you at the live stream table and coming to some of your sessions as well. Hopefully, you can spare a couple of minutes somewhere to come by and visit us on Radio Row, Broadcast Row, if you will, either in the mornings or in the afternoons. Heather Wagenhals, it's Unlock Your Wealth. Is the best place to follow you on your social media? It's at Unlock Your Wealth on a bunch of different platforms, or
Yes.
is there a website specifically for you? Or
You can go to unlockyourwealth.com, and that has all the resources to my shows, my books. We've got the 3-5 money method coming out this fall. And if you want to follow me on socials for all of the up to minute stuff, and you can also DM me privately and we can have a conversation. If you are having a particular challenge that you need just a little bit of help getting over that hump, I'd be happy to help you. Just DM me on my socials at Unlock Your Wealth.
well, thank you so much for taking some time out with us and talking about it, and hopefully inspiring some folks to come to Memphis. And if they can't, again, just how do they sign up for the live stream? Through freedomfest.com? Will there be a link there to sign up for the live streams that you're hosting?
Yes, absolutely. All they have to do is go to freedomfest.com and find the popover, drop in an email address, and they'll be good to go. And I might remind you that you need to get your tickets now, because if you wait till you get to Memphis, prices go up at the door. So visit freedomfest.com now and grab your tickets. And I'll look forward to seeing you in Memphis.
See, that's the sales pitch. That's ABC right there. Always be closing. Heather, you have a great day.
Thanks so much. You make it a great day too.
And thank you for joining us here on the Afternoon Constitutional. For all of us here at the Government Oversight and Accountability LLC, as well as freedomfest.com. We look forward to seeing you there in our broadcast brought to you by the Spirit of Virginia and Americans for Prosperity of Virginia. Thank you for watching, and until tomorrow, well, I think tomorrow we're going to be busy. It's Independence Day, and there's a lot going on. So probably Wednesday we'll be back. So long, and thanks for all the fish.